I love you.
Very nice. You came back. Welcome. I'm the Green
no.
Traveler. This is Green Faceless on the Couch. I'm not doing any more than that. We probably heard that, like, for most of our childhood, we probably heard that more than, like, 100 times a day.
Yeah. I feel like the one that really persists still is My Wife. I feel like people are still on that. And you know what? We watched the movie, and he doesn't really say it like that. He says, "This is my wife." Yeah. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, we exaggerated a lot of things. Like, I mean, even the very nice, it's very minimal in the movie. He only does, like, maybe 3 or 4 times. But
the high five bit's pretty good, though. I like that.
Yeah. But boy, did kids stretch that to the extreme and say it for everything.
Man, why were kids watching these movies? Okay, well, I am the Faceless Leon, and this is a podcast about movies and TV, and I think pretty obvious. Well, I mean, if you clicked on to listen to this, you know we're talking about the Borat movies.
Yeah, the first one with Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan.
Glorious.
And it has nothing to do with actual Kazakhstan. It was banned in actual Kazakhstan.
Yeah. They did not appreciate it. They're like, our culture is nothing like this. and I have read Sacha Baron Cohen talking about that in particular, and he said, I just wanted to pick a country that people have scarcely heard of and know nothing about, so that I could do whatever I wanted in it. Which, you know, maybe he should have made up a country. I mean, he could have.
Yeah, I mean, he could have easily have.
He could have still been of Central Asia. He could have, like, cut out some borders in there and just like, this is Little Stan or something. I don't know.
Right, but then the reaction wouldn't be real because people at least know the name Kazakhstan. They just don't know about it.
They don't know anything about it, at least in our country.
But in reality, if you just chose any kind of weird word, you know, it's just like, this is Dubaklavstan. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
That could be real, sure.
It's like it doesn't sound right, but I'm not gonna question it because I don't know anything about that region of the world.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, Central Asia, man. I don't know. I guess it's really Western Asia, but they call it Central Asia, don't they? I'm not mistaken in that.
Don't question things.
The way the Western world labels the rest of the world is crazy. Like the Middle East, I suppose that makes sense if you're in Europe, but we know that there's 2 other continents in the West, so whatever. Or the East, depending how it's a globe. Everybody, you should know it's a globe. Some people are arguing that nowadays, and that's not what we're talking about today, though. What's the other movie called?
Oh, it had many titles, but its main title was Borat subsequent movie film delivery of prodigious bride to American regime for make benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan.
Yep. But like you said, there's a bit throughout where the title keeps on changing, and that's pretty good. I like that bit.
Yeah, because the American regime that he is offering his daughter up to as a bride changes from person to person. I think 2 times, or is it just once? I mean, other things happen, I guess, that, you know, once it fails, it alters the title.
Yeah, I think that was the main bit. Like, at first they were gonna offer this monkey porn star who he's Kazakhstan's ministry of culture too, I think. Yeah.
Wasn't his name just Jimmy or something like that? It was something really simple.
Johnny the monkey. It's Johnny the monkey.
Johnny.
And he was a chimpanzee porn star, which is just ridiculous. But we should probably talk about these movies in order.
Well, everything about these movies is ridiculous. I don't think there's really anything to talk about. It's just the main plot and what happens. Because
that's true.
In the first Borat film, the plot is really just Borat is sent to America to, well, I guess, learn about the culture and bring it back to Kazakhstan, make a documentary about it.
Yeah.
And while
That's pretty
there,
much it.
Yeah, while there, he just gets the idea that he has to marry Pamela Anderson. I don't remember why, but that becomes his sole goal.
His first experience with Pamela Anderson is sitting in the hotel room flipping through the channels, which at first he like turns on the TV and all there is, you know, when you go to a hotel, they have like that slide show up that's just talking about like stuff you could do at the hotel. And he's like, I've been watching this for 3 hours. It never changes. And he's like, well, you have to change the channel. and he's flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden he lands on Baywatch, and he's like, I must meet this CJ. I must.
It's like the beauty of it is in that first movie, everything is set up and that the people who interact with him in the scenes, they're clueless. They have no idea that he's an actor.
Yeah.
They have no idea that he is basically just mocking them. He's not actually clueless about every American way. He's just he's just acting this way, and these people they have no idea about it. And so the reactions are real. And sometimes they're very gentle.
Yeah.
And they're very like, oh, this guy just doesn't understand how a remote control works. All right, you have to flip through the channels like this with this button. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And other times they're a little more cautious. Borat greets everybody with 2 kisses on the cheeks. And there are some men who greatly threaten him when he approaches them.
I will sock you in the... One guy said I'll pop you in the dick.
Yeah.
One guy. They try to kiss me. I mean, like, for real, though. I mean, obviously, Sacha Baron Cohen knows that you don't go walking around New York trying to kiss people.
Well, especially not during a pandemic, which is when the second film is filmed.
With the second film, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, there's some moments in the second one where I think he took jokes a little too far at times. I'm like, come on, man. Like,
yeah. I mean, though, that is kind of just the comedy in general of these 2 films. I think that is his intent to take it as far as he fucking can.
Yeah, and I think for the most part he does a great job at it, but there were a few areas in the second film where I just felt like a line was crossed that I was just like, for me as the viewer, I was like, all right, now I'm not having fun anymore. I'm just kind of pissed at you.
Yeah, I definitely had that moment for both films, honestly. I think I'll say up front that this comedy really isn't my cup of tea. One thing I meant to do is look up like the Webster Dictionary definition of satire. I'm going to do it real quick. So, this is according to Oxford.
Ooh, fancy.
A noun, the use of humor, irony, exaggeration to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues.
So hit the nail on the head right there.
That explains the Borat films entirely. And I think something you mentioned before we started recording is that unfortunately some people are going to watch these movies and be like, yeah, I do agree with that. Like with some of the stupid backwards shit that Borat is portraying.
There's some people who just don't recognize satire or sarcasm or like that kind of humor. Like it just goes over their heads and they actually see it as being real. They don't see it as being mocking or, as you said, exposing. It definitely does a great job at exposing. That's the thing, is like I was definitely entertained, and there's a lot of problems that are brought very clearly to light by people who just didn't realize they were what they were saying in a camera, I guess. Like those frat guys on that bus in the first movie. The frat bros that give him a bus ride.
Oh, the frat bros. Oh, yeah, in the RV. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, oh my God, those fucking guys. I hated them.
Oh, I do too.
For sure.
I want to know if they've watched this back and been like, oh shit, I'm a terrible person, aren't I?
I'm sure that they wrote it, that they watched it because they were frat bros, and I know that the frat bros were like, yeah, you gotta watch this movie. It's hilarious.
I'm in it.
Yeah, they were spouting some awful anti-feminist stuff and racial stuff. It was gross. Yeah. Like one guy in particular was like, the minorities actually have more power in this country. Isn't that messed up? And I'm like, what the hell, dude? I mean, first off, wholly inaccurate. Second off, maybe we need to take white men down a peg. I mean,
especially that white man.
Yeah, especially you.
and see, that was one thing I liked about the second one, was they have another scene like that where COVID-19 happens. Borat has to settle down in an apartment for a few days during lockup, and he settles in with two right-wing extremists who are part of QAnon, I believe, or at least have read QAnon posts, and and you get their political side where you're just like, you know, for people like you and me, we're disagreeing quite wholeheartedly with everything they're saying, but then Borat mentions his country's treatment of women and how he's been treating his daughter the whole movie, and these two guys who we disagree with politically entirely, they're like, no, man, you can't be treating women like that. He's like,
yeah. I thought that was hilarious. I even turned to my wife and I was like, man, they're surprisingly progressive about women's rights. That is hilarious. I was wondering if those guys were actually actors. But
yeah, they definitely felt like actors. That was my problem with
more
the second
than
movie.
Other people. At the very least, I can't, like, they don't, a lot of the cast members don't have pictures because they are real people.
Like actors aren't.
So, yeah. Thank you for pointing out my flawed statement. They aren't people in the limelight. They don't have headshots to share with IMDb. But anyways, these two guys, like, it's really funny that they just like become best friends with Borat while during COVID lockdown. Oh my god. Oh, there's this really funny bit. We haven't even talked about the plot of this particular movie, but when they're in the lockdown, they're trying to kill COVID in their house, and Borat's got a magnifying glass and a frying pan. He looks through the magnifying glass and he smacks it with the frying pan. He's like, no, you kill it with this. And he's got a can of Lysol. He sprays it, and then Borat smacks it with the pan.
I love it. Yeah, I felt like they were definitely actors.
I hope so. I hope so.
But yeah, that's the difference between the two movies is, you know, the first one doesn't really have a plot. It's kind of, I mean, it does, but it's very loosely formed and is more about the exposure comedy that's going on in the streets.
Right.
And the second one has more of a plot, and it's less about the improv comedy. I feel like more people were in on the joke. They were at least informed that they were filming a documentary or something. Right.
And then also just the exposure of the character. Like, everyone at that point knows who Borat is. I say everyone. Yeah. Obviously, there's some people that he fooled, but there's also like a really good bit where he puts on different disguises so that people don't recognize him. But the first movie, there was 400 hours of footage plus 50 hours of behind the scenes footage, and they pared that down to an 84-minute movie. Yeah. So that kind of speaks to the fact that there was no plot going ahead to this. It was like it was Sacha Baron Cohen and the crew going on a road trip making improv comedy.
Yeah, and throughout the course of that show, or of the first movie, only like 4 people knew what was going on. So it was like, it was only Sacha Baron Cohen, the other actor that's with him. What's his name? I gotta look that up.
The actor's name is Ken Davatian. I apologize if I mispronounced his name, but the character's name is Azamat. I really liked Azamat.
I did too.
I really liked him.
And I'm sad what happens to him in the second movie. At the very beginning of the movie.
I don't know. Here, I'm gonna real quick. I was curious why he was not in the second movie. It does it. He is still with us. That's what I was curious about. If he had,
you just wanted to know if he died. That's cruel.
I was curious. No, I was just curious because I mean, you know, like when you introduce a character like that who becomes Borat's best friend, you kind of expect to see him in the second movie. Maybe he was busy doing something, or maybe he's retired. Who knows?
But the only other people that knew what was going on, or what would happen improvisational wise, was Linnell, Borat's prostitute wife, and Pam Anderson herself. Which thank God she at least knew what was going on. Because
for that fucking scene, oh my God. So eventually, Borat gets to a signing for Pamela Anderson, and he's like, will you marry me? And she's like, no, I don't think so. And he says, consent is not necessary. And he puts a bag over her, and that's apparently the traditional Kazakh way, which obviously
kidnapping your bride.
Yes. After the movie came out, the government of Kazakhstan wanted to make it clear that women, did not live in cages and freely traveled and owned and drove their own cars. And Jewish people were allowed to go to synagogue freely.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they wanted to make that very clear.
I understand completely why. Yeah, he's very cruel to the Kazakhstan.
Yes, he is. But it's completely fabricated, and I do believe that Sacha Baron Cohen going in just trusted the audience to understand that it was a fictionalized Kazakhstan. But it's a character that was to a certain extent. You got it. It's the character's been around for a while.
Yeah, the character came from his Ali G show, so it's like people knew that Borat was fake, but there were still a lot of people who were not familiar with that show at all. Like I didn't know anything,
especially like U.S.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Sacha Baron Cohen until Borat came out. Like, that was my first exposure to him.
Right.
And I honestly didn't like him as a kid. I didn't like that kind of humor. So it's like,
sure,
everybody was constantly quoting him, and I was like, I don't really care for that kind of movie. It's like, it's stupid.
I was the same.
Yeah.
I was the same as you. I was like, it's racist, it's stupid.
Yeah.
But now that I understand satire a little bit better, I'm able to get a little bit more enjoyment out of it. And also, like, the political things that he was trying to point out about our nation, I was a little bit more blind to growing up. Like xenophobia and the homophobia that our country suffers from. As a kid, you're kind of just brought up to believe that it doesn't exist. And then you grow up and you're like, oh, our country hates people. That's great.
The versions of me that when he first filmed this, if I had been caught on camera when he first filmed this, I would have reacted way differently than, say, today, if I were to just accidentally happen upon a Sacha Baron Cohen set and like get caught in one of his public stunts. Back then, I would have been like, I don't like this. Get away from me. Nowadays, I probably would have like just be laughing and enjoying that, having a good time with somebody acting like that around me. I'd just be like, oh god, this guy's crazy, and I love it.
Yeah, and because we would like just be there eating grins, watching him make a fool out of these bigoted people, we probably wouldn't have made it in the movie.
Right. Well, I also feel like some of them aren't actually bigoted. They just realized, because in the second movie at least, more of them knew that they were going to be filmed, that they were going to be in a documentary styled movie. Right. And I think they quickly realized when he started acting like he is, like when he's in character, I think they realized maybe this isn't a serious documentary. So they just started to play it up for camera, because like a lot of people are, if they realize that, they're just going to start trying to play it up and make it seem better. So I feel like there were some areas where he obviously caught real bigotry and real terrible thinking on camera, but then there's some moments where I feel like it was just played up. like the Instagram girl in I can't remember her name, but in the second movie, I feel like she started acting.
Macy something.
Yeah, I feel like she started playing it up more because she thought it was more of a joke. It definitely didn't feel like she was
right.
She was
Macy Chanel. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. In an interview, like I did, it was the Variety article you shared to me. She did say that she did not feel like her actual persona was being portrayed in the film, but she definitely said those things.
Yeah,
like,
but I felt like that was more of a moment.
You can't really avoid that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like I felt like that itself was more of a moment where she had an idea of what the documentary they were filming was about, and so she was trying to play it up for camera for that documentary style, because that's just how I felt about it, because it just didn't feel, it felt more like acting and less like a realistic encounter.
Right. So because we keep on going back and forth on both films, I think maybe we should go ahead and mention what the second film's about a little bit more. So The Prodigious Bride is actually Borat's daughter Tutar, who's only 15. She's being portrayed by Maria Bakalova, who at the time this was filmed was 24. So the situations they put her in are less inappropriate than, I mean, they're inappropriate for a 15-year-old girl. Maybe I should say woman, because it is a feminist plot. You know, she like, they take her from a culture, I say with air quotes that the audience can't see, a culture where they put women in cages, to a journalist later in the film. That's probably a spoiler, but anyhow, she sneaks to America with Borat. Borat's on another mission for the Kazakhstan government.
Yeah.
The first movie that he made Kazakhstan a laughing stock. He was sent to prison. Now he's been released to go and do it again and make people respect Kazakhstan by offering Johnny the Monkey as a present to Mike Pence.
Yes.
And I won't spoil why Johnny the Monkey gets taken out of the movie, but Tutar is then there, and he's like, what if I offer my daughter instead? What as a wife? And the government's like, yes, you do that. And if you fail, we'll kill you. Tutar is, because she's practically been living in a stable her entire life, not very, what's what I want to say? She's not very elegant. She's in a very literal sense, very dirty. So he wants to get her made over and taught American ways, or practically mating rituals. And so at the point in the movie where he is talking to Macy Chanel, I think I set up the movie enough. That's what the movie's about. She is talking to her to try to figure out how to be a sugar baby, because, you know, she has no idea what the culture is about.
Right.
And Macy's there, and she's like, well, how old one thing she says is, how old do you like them? And she says, nearly dead. and Macy says, well, then I think you should find somebody who's just had a heart attack.
Yeah.
I mean, she says that. It's an improvised scene.
Yeah, I'm not supporting or standing up for her, the Instagram girl lady.
Sure.
I'm just stating that it felt like she was acting more than being serious. It felt like she was aware immediately, maybe not aware that it was a mockumentary, but she became aware that it wasn't a very serious documentary. And she's like, this is probably a waste of my time. I'm not going to be very serious with this.
Right. But it is set up in a way so that the audience can watch it and be like, think that because there is a cultural division between the two characters, that she's trying to simplify what she thinks.
Yeah.
And when you boil it down, it's not good.
No.
Like, she tells Tutar that she has to be weak to attract these older men, which, throughout the film, I think it's kind of nice that you got this other character who really gets to grow in this movie. There wasn't really much growth or character arcs in the first movie.
No, not at all.
But Tutar, gets to realize that she does not have to be a weak subclass individual.
Yeah. And I think one of the key contributing factors to that growth is the babysitter woman. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I really Janice. Let me get her last name, but it was definitely Janice.
Yeah. And she thought it was a documentary.
Janice Jones. Yeah, she really did think it was a documentary.
Like, I think there was like some periods where she thought maybe this is more of comedic than what she thought, but like she was so appalled by how Borat's daughter Tutar was raised. And she teaches her so many things about freedom and equality, and like just she raises her up, like she puts her on this pedestal, and she's like, now you're gonna be the best you can be, and I want you to be that. And like, there's so many good moments with her that I was like, I fucking love you. Like,
I fucking love Janice. Yeah, I really want to meet Janice in real life and be like, you're a good person, right? A solid good person. You were put on the spot and you were good.
Yeah, you helped this person out so much that they were able to find a better story out of it.
Yeah, like, imagine this movie without that turn.
Yeah.
Without her being like, your daddy is a liar.
Yeah.
That's literally what she tells.
They probably would have just put on like some TV show or something and had, Tudor like be like, it's like they have so much power and freedom here.
Yeah, there's another scene. Man, I really do. I think I enjoyed Maria's portrayal of her character a little bit more than Sacha, really. Yeah. But he's playing a character he's played for years, so
that he's retired.
He obviously is Borat. Yeah, he retired. He only brought back. He said he felt that it was necessary because of everything that was happening last year. And I can't believe that he managed to get this movie out before the election.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's some hard work.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. I think a lot of the stuff that he exposes is important, especially the division of how women are still treated in our society. Right. That said, when he approaches, eventually he ends up approaching Rudy Giuliani instead of Michael Pence. And I don't know why I said Michael Pence.
Yeah, that's right.
But when he approaches Rudy Giuliani, it caused a lot of chaos and publicity. Because people are like, well, look what kind of a dirty pervert Rudy is. I'm not saying he's not a dirty pervert, but I am saying that scene is heavily edited to make him look more like a dirty pervert. Because he definitely has.
Right.
He definitely
There's a particular moment.
Yeah. Yeah, like the hand down the pants scene where it's very clear that he is just taking his mic off. Like, if you've worked in the industry, you know how it is. Yeah. And he was just
that's what I was thinking too when I watched it. But it does kind of look like he's reaching in his pants to, get his willy going. Yeah. But right before that, he does say, like, she offers to have a drink with him in the bedroom of this hotel suite. Yeah. And then when they're heading back there, he does say, you can give me your phone number and your address. Yeah. And then they start taking off his mic and stuff.
But that soundbite comes when his back is to the camera. The audio quality is even different. It's very clear that it was taken out of context and placed right there just to make it even creepier. Because it's like the audio quality was quieter than outside of what the apartment was. Like, it's just Sacha just making it look worse. And
I know that there was some like really big backlash against Rudy because of this, and I mean,
I support that.
I think we can both openly say we're not supporters of Rudy Giuliani or
no, I hate the man.
Really, no, anything he represents. But he came out and he's like, I never did anything inappropriate in and around when that movie was being filmed. And, well, I mean, you were completely ignoring social distancing and all that other shit, but...
And there are some things that there are some things that even out of context, what he says is gross. Like, like there's some comments he makes that it's just like, even in the proper context of a conversation, I can't find any way for that not to be a skeevy, gross, disgusting thing to say to somebody who is clearly younger, like close to 20s. I mean, the character she's portraying is supposed to be 15, but like, as you said, the actress herself is in her 20s.
But he is being set up to be put in a situation to be gross.
Yeah, and as Maria Bakalova said, you know, she never felt unsafe or anything in any kind of detrimental situation throughout the interview. You know, there was other people in the room. She had
the whole crew there. And Sasha was there.
But it made for good comedy.
It made for good comedy, especially because like you're like, how did they get this to happen?
Right.
How did they get this big political guy?
Yeah, how did they get this close? Like, you'd think they would have screamed a lot better.
So, do you remember why they switched to Rudy instead of Mike?
Well, I mean, I remember the CPAC.
Yeah. Oh my god.
That Sasha had been ruined.
Yeah.
Dressed like Donald Trump.
He disguises himself like Donald Trump because he's like, who would Mike Pence trust? Well, only Donald Trump.
Obviously.
So he dresses up like Donald Trump, and then he bursts into, I believe, the women's restroom to collect Jutai and throws her over his shoulder, and then runs in there. He's like, Mike, I have a present for you.
I got the girl.
Like in the middle of his, right in the middle of his speech.
And like Mike's reaction is golden because he was just like really pissed off. Yeah. He like shuts down.
He's so cross.
He turns like a bright red. And he's just like, I hate you.
Oh man,
he's got it.
And they get escorted out by security, obviously. But damn,
sense of humor.
That was a good mask.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was like.
Especially for the costume store that he bought it in, like it was like it looked like a third-rate mask, and you're just like, nope, it's pretty damn good actually. Like,
yeah, it's really good. I think obviously some kind of prop master made it for the movie, but in the storyline, you're right. He goes to he buys all sorts of shit at this costume shop.
They spend money so frivolously in the second movie. Like in the first one, the budget was like seemed like very tight and like, ooh, I can't afford that. You know, it's like that's the gag. But in the second one, he like goes into an antique store in the South and like busts everything in there.
Was that the second one? I thought that was the first one.
Oh no.
I don't know.
They're blending.
They're very similar films. So.
I just remember he can't pay for it. Like they're like, that's $4,000 worth of damage, and he pays them in like $2,000, and it's just like, well, that's what I got.
Yeah, that's what I got. And he's like, okay, now leave. Not only that, like when he first comes into the store, they have Confederate flags everywhere, and he's like, why do you have so many of these flags? And he's like, oh, we are recognizing our heritage or something like that. Yeah. Stupid. But I'm glad that we're kind of moving away from that.
Yeah, I'm glad that he busted everything in that shop.
I didn't know the truck was there. They kept on like rolling around on a taco truck. Oh, it's great stuff. Well, I don't know how much we want to say about these movies. There's definitely some really good satire about the pandemic, which we mentioned a little bit. Particular when he becomes Country Steve.
Oh God!
And gets on stage and sings Wuhan Flu, which was more catchy than it needed to be, Sasha.
It's so bad.
So apparently, I don't remember the political person's name that came out about it, saying that Sasha, disguised as a political action committee, paid for the musical setup. That he had his own personal security block the stage, according to this political person, so that they couldn't take him off the stage to keep him from saying all the racist shit in the song. And apparently, also according to this political guy, the people in the crowd started booing him.
Yeah.
And then at that point, Sacha fled the scene. But in the movie, they start singing along.
Yeah, it's very clear.
And I don't know how you would convince that many people to start singing along.
Yeah.
If they were upset about the song.
My belief is that he was up there for like 10 to 15 minutes. And for the first 10 minutes, they were like, yeah, we're all for this. Let's, we like everything that this racist bigot is saying on stage. And then he started probably for the last 5 minutes. He probably broke character for a little bit that we don't see on the screen and was making fun of them. And then they're like, oh, and then they started booing. That's what I'm assuming, is that he flipped the tables on them and started making fun of them. And then that's when he fled the scene.
Yeah, there's another article that I read that said that he was actually quite afraid of getting shot while filming this movie.
I would be too, because it's like...
But they didn't really... the article honestly really didn't focus on the fact that he was afraid of this. It just mentioned it. But that was still the headline of the article. And I was like, what a stupid article. But I would believe it. Right. I would be afraid too, like you said. They had like freaking assault rifles strapped to themselves, some of these guys at this rights rally.
You and I live in a very moderately liberal spot in the middle of a conservative area. Right. And, I came across one guy who was a gun carrier, open carry. And all I did was shake my head at his driving. And then he followed me to a parking lot, got out of his car, and threatened to shoot me just because I had an issue with his driving. I didn't do anything but shake my head, and this guy was like, I'm going to fucking kill you because of that. Yeah. And it's like, a lot of people out there should not have fucking guns. And they're the idiots that attend these kind of rallies, and like to stand up there and mock shit like that, I would have been afraid of getting shot.
Yeah. I mean, God, if your psychology does not allow you to take a critique on without threatening the life of somebody, like actually threatening the life of somebody, then something should be in place. Yeah. And this is probably the most political we've been on this show. Something should be in place to prevent you from having the ability to follow through.
To carry a gun.
That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, to carry a gun, to be put in that situation where you could hurt someone for saying something.
I mean, just in general, I think it's good.
It's supposed to be for defense.
Yeah, exactly. And just in general, I think it's important to throw out there that if you can't take a critique in any kind of facet of life, like, if getting a critical response or like some kind of constructive criticism like triggers you to some kind of like anger reaction, probably just talk to a psychiatrist, because that's not healthy.
Yeah, you need to talk to somebody. Yeah, because like even if you still feel that you were right in whatever choice it was that you made, at the end of the day, you should be able to shrug that off your shoulder and continue on with your life.
Yeah.
It should not be a big deal.
Or if you feel that you are right, when that constructive criticism comes, just debate it. And debate it calmly and quietly.
Yeah, explain calmly. Yes, calmly. Thank you, Greg. Our culture is out of control.
Well, it's like I have a friend at work who it's like we don't see eye to eye on political issues, but we just talk about it. We don't get mad at each other because it's just like, no, I think you're wrong. It's like, oh, well, I see where you're coming from, but like, here's why I think this way. And it's just like, oh, I guess I understand what you're talking about. And we just discuss things naturally. There's no anger in between us.
Yeah. God, I mean, I grew up in a family that loves to debate. In the last few years, it has gotten too heated. It's just, but that's just a mirror of how divided our country has become in current times. All right. So I did want to mention, before we move on to closing statements, because I do feel like we're kind of wrapping up, I do want to mention the anti-Semitic parts. I feel like for us, as a modern audience who tries to be all inclusive and loving in our lives, it's really hard to watch these particular scenes. In the first movie, you got the running of the Jew scene, which has these demonized
caricatures.
I don't know, like they're almost like parade floats. They're caricatures running down, and it's running the bull style kind of thing. And then in this second movie, there's this particular scene where there was a lawsuit over, where he goes to a synagogue dressed very inappropriate, very anti-Semitically, and then goes and talks to this Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. I mean, that scene comes right after he discovers online the conspiracy theory that the Holocaust didn't happen. And for the culture of his, of his fake country of Kazakhstan, they're presented as very anti-Semitic. And so discovering that, the Holocaust, this supposedly great event in his eyes, which is gross, but didn't happen, it was kind of like, oh no, he was devastated, I guess. And then when this lady tells him that she survived the Holocaust, you see him like burst into happiness that actually happened. And it's supposed to be funny, and I get that it's supposed to be funny, but for me, I was just like, that's disgusting, man. Like, what she went through, and then you're turning this into a comedic scene.
Right. So, some background on this particular scene. So, her daughter sued Amazon, tried to, I guess. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all the legalese, but she filed a lawsuit against Amazon and Sacha's production company over this, saying that her mother was duped into doing this scene. And her argument, that at least the lawyer's argument, was that the signature was messed up. She started signing on the wrong line and then crossed it out and then printed her signature. And she's like, that's not what her signature is like. And then also she just didn't like the way her mother was portrayed. But on Sacha Baron Cohen's side of things, the trial did get thrown out. I'll just say that, because there wasn't enough evidence. But on Sacha Baron Cohen's side, this is one of the very few times where he broke character before the scene and explained what was going to go down, because he didn't want. I mean, it could have been an ethical nightmare if he. Well,
he also, I feel like he didn't want to be disrespectful, because again, he is Jewish too, so like he understands the power of the Holocaust and the events that happened. So it's like I do respect him for breaking character there, but it just, I don't know, watching it, that was the one scene where I was like, I really just don't want to watch this scene. I was just like, I kind of just like walked away and made some food. It
felt disrespectful. It really did. So I am glad to hear that beforehand he explained what was going to happen, because I mean, that could have broke that poor woman's heart. She did pass away before the movie was released on Amazon.
And he dedicated it in her memory too.
He did, which from her daughter's point of view, that could be even more insulting. But in truth, Sacha Baron Cohen's design for all these anti-Semitic scenes is anti-Semitism. It is a satire on anti-Semitism to kind of, he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he uses it as a tool to reveal the audience's own prejudices or apathy. That's not exactly the term that he was used, towards anti-Semitism. And he recalls from his days in university that there was a particular historian that said the road to Auschwitz was paved with indifference. And he said that always stuck with him as a Jewish person, that in that period in Germany, you didn't necessarily have to be a raging anti-Semite. You just had to be indifferent to what was going on. So I think what he's trying to do, and it's important to discuss what he's trying to do, is to show people this is what people think. So what do you think about it?
I agree with what he's trying to do. The problem is, like, in our childhood, when we were growing up, anti-Semitic humor was just a thing. It was everywhere. You know, Family Guy had it, South Park had it. Like, all these shows had anti-Semitic humor. And then you have Sacha Baron Cohen, who comes out and makes it, like, hugely popular in the wrong, in a way that he meant to be exposure, but that ended up becoming people just continuing those jokes unironically, or maybe ironically. I don't remember. I don't know the proper use of the word there, but it just became more anti-Semitic humor instead of exposing the problem, which again, on one hand, I appreciate him trying to do it, and on the other hand, I hate us as the viewer for not understanding the satire of it and realizing it's stupid and wrong.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's just the whole point of satire is to comment on society, on what's wrong with society. But as a viewer, as a person who does not agree with those parts of society, you watch it and you're just like, this just hurts me to watch. So, I don't know how I feel about
the humor of it. Kind of just falls away, and it's just like, because some people just find it so funny that they just incorporate it into their day, and by doing that it becomes racist or anti-Semitic and just wrong.
So I did want to mention that his grandmother, it might be his great grandmother, so I'll just mention that, but she called him after watching the premiere, and she lives in Israel. She called him and told him that she thought it was hilarious, especially the anti-Semitic parts, and why she thought it was so funny. I just thought that was worth mentioning. Yeah. I don't know what I want to say about that, but he practices Judaism pretty strictly. He keeps kosher. He tries to keep the Sabbath. I mean, he's a pretty busy man, so I'm sure he has to work some Friday nights. But yeah, he takes his religion seriously. And so knowing that, you have to acknowledge that he's not being anti-Semitic. Yeah. We're just taking it that way. I don't know. There's a lot of discussion going on about your intention and what's actually being perceived. And I don't know. I don't know which way I land on that. I definitely think, despite your intention, you have to acknowledge how it's being perceived and then go forward from there.
I mean, just leading into closing statements, I would say that taken as a satire, knowing in advance, like if you go into this knowing it's a satire, I think both of these are great movies. I think the jokes are hilarious. Sure. They can come off as offensive, but they're exposing the offense. And in that light, I give both of them 3 stars, I would say, because I do enjoy both of them. The first one, as I said, is less of a story, more of the improv humor, and it's far funnier in my opinion than the sequel. And I would say the sequel doesn't best it in my mind, but I enjoyed it more because there's more of a thorough story, because it's more of a conventional story to follow. And I also just enjoyed the tale of Tutar, and Maria Bakalova was just absolutely fun to watch.
She is awesome.
She's great.
Yeah. Like the transformation of the character. It's like she's 3 different characters throughout the movie, really. She's like, she really does a good job of making that first version of her character as animalistic as possible. And then she's kind of like some kind of weird morph in between from that and a fully realized woman, despite still having all the strange fake Kazakh cultural, I don't know, misgivings isn't the right word, misconceptions might be better.
There you go.
But she still is a fully liberated woman who becomes a journalist, and the number 3 journalist in all of Kazakhstan. where Borat is number 4. So going off of that, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. You got to know that these are satire going in. Otherwise you'll have one or two reactions. Ooh, this is gross, or yeah, I love this shit, and then the rest of the world hates you. But as an educated adult, I think it is a far more impactful film than if you go in just blind. Or as a kid. Kids should not watch these movies.
I think kids can watch it.
Right? So honestly, I still don't really like the first movie. I don't. I think it was a really good commentary on American culture, but like the problematic parts with it, I think kind of outweigh that for me.
Yeah.
Especially like just the backlash from the actual country in general. Like Sacha could have done a little bit more research on whether or not he would be offending this place or not, and he could have just made up another country.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I don't know. I think I give it half a face. I don't really enjoy the movie. However, I really enjoyed the second one. I don't know why I liked it so much more. I mean, you obviously have that feeling in the first one that it is a documentary.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of lost a little bit in the second movie. But just that relationship between Borat and Tutar is so nice. Yeah. I like it. Like it starts at such a really gross place, but then they come together and they're a great journalist duo, and they make their Kazakhstan better.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing I didn't mention. So I give that one a full face is what I was going to say. But another thing I didn't mention is that there is some anti-Romani stuff in there that's just kind of tossed in. And I didn't necessarily think that was necessary. It wasn't necessary, really. But that's all I got to say about it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. The sequel, Borat subsequent movie film wins. I think in the regards of our sequel smash idea, I don't think the sequel was necessary, but it did outperform in my like. Again, I still think the first one's a better mockumentary, but sure. I enjoyed the second one more, so I would give it the victory slot.
Okay. Well, so I think we both agree on the winner of the episode, but I am going to disagree on the necessity of the movie, because like just everything that happened this year, I just and I feel like his whole purpose behind it was to highlight, especially to the American people, what is going wrong in our culture, and to push us to vote in that election that happened just after the premiere.
Yeah.
So I think it was a necessary film. I don't know that you necessarily need to watch it though.
That's fair. And I'm also realizing that we're posting this on April Fool's Day. No lies were posted in this video. I think we mean most of what we had said. But yeah, we talked about fools. We're changing the meaning of the holiday. We talked about a fool, and I hope you enjoyed.
Right, yeah.
I've been the Green Traveler.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I am the Faceless Leon. And one last note. Why I'm not a huge fan of Borat, I do love UK's greatest fool, Sacha Baron Cohen. I love him.
Yeah, he is fun.
He's good. I like him. Safe travels and good night. All right. See how that goes. Green and Faceless on the Couch is a proud production of Fiction Works 19. If you like the show, please show your support by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Like, follow, subscribe, wherever you might listen. We also now have a Patreon account. If you feel so inclined to support us in a financial manner, please become a patron by visiting patreon.com/greenandfaceless. You can also find more information about us on our Facebook account or on the FictionWorks19 Instagram account. Thank you so much for listening.